Well, there's a connection, honestly. Really, there's a connection between, what they talk about in the West with the so-called crisis of masculinity. The idea of men not being men, or men not acting like men, not understanding what it means to be a man, and so on. There's a connection between that and all of the, or anyway, a lot of the online political ranting that we see. Like even among Muslims in the diaspora in the West who've been westernized. They have these very simplistic perspectives about geopolitics. And these very childishly judgmental ideas about the rulers. The rulers are supposed to do this, that, and the other. And if they don't do what I think that they should do, then they're sellouts, they're weak, they're traitors, and what have you. This is a very adolescent view. Because these are views of people who have no concept of responsible decision making. You understand? They have no concept of the duty that comes with authority. And that's essentially at the root, at the core of this whole so-called masculinity crisis. On a personal level, they don't understand responsibility on a personal level. And then they project that ignorance into their quasi-analysis of politics. See, you're talking about people who have never had to actually weigh the consequences of their actions. They've never had to weigh the consequences. Or anyway, they generally don't weigh the consequences. Whether they've had to or not, they don't do it. They just act on their urges and their impulses and their whims, and they think that that's manly because it's powerful to do what you want. And any individual man who doesn't act like that, they'll say he's not manly. And if any individual government on a state level, if a government doesn't act like that, then they think that that government is not taking a stand. They think that that government is weak, or it's traitorous, or sellouts, or what have you. This means you've never really had any experience in your life. I mean, honestly. It means that you've never learned that you need to make careful decisions in life. You need to anticipate outcomes in life. You have to choose your actions wisely. You've never learned that on a personal level. Because that's what you want a man to be like. A man is supposed to be like that. And that's actually the way a government is also supposed to be. But if you're not a man like that, then you're not going to appreciate the importance of a government being like that. You understand? And basically, you're never really going to understand what's going on in the world. Because you're just a slave to your feelings. You're a slave to your own temper. You're a slave to your desires. You're a slave to your emotions and so forth. I mean, you don't even need red pill podcast bros to exist, or anti so-called patriarchy feminist types to exist. You don't need any of that to exist in order for you to know that there's a lack of masculinity in the West. You can literally just look at the political commentary coming out of the West to understand, including from Muslims in the diaspora, including from Muslims. Because men don't talk like that. Men don't think like that. Men don't completely lack that sense of responsibility and that sense of duty and complex decision-making and long-term planning like that. That's not masculine. Not to mention the quality of just flapping your gums nonstop about anything, about things that you don't even actually know anything about, that you're not informed about or educated about. And it's always histrionic, it's always emotional, it's always raving, it's always loud, it's always performative, and so forth. Okay, these are not the qualities of men. These are not masculine qualities. So yes, we know you have a masculinity problem in the West. I mean, I'm not saying that Western or westernized women are necessarily any better, obviously. I mean, on the one hand, you've got them demanding an end to the patriarchy. And on the other hand, telling men that they need to step up and be leaders and take responsibility and take care of women and so forth. Like, you don't even understand that what you're calling for is patriarchy, and what you're suffering from is the absence of patriarchy. You understand? But whatever. Patriarchy isn't our term anyway. That's not an Islamic term. No, the truth is, in the West, both sides of the gender divide are insufferable and psychotic, in my opinion. It's no wonder that the birth rate is so low. Honestly, it's amazing to me that men and women in the West can even tolerate each other long enough to get the check for dinner, much less actually have relationships. I mean, of course, obviously, this is how it's depicted on social media, so who knows what the reality is on the ground. Alhamdulillah, I'm not there, so I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what the situation is on the ground. Alhamdulillah, I don't. But either way, the online phenomenon of social and political tantrums reflects the same thing: a basic lack of maturity, a lack of seriousness, a lack of experience, a lack of the ability to process experiences. Personally, I'm not frankly interested in the whole gender, man, woman, masculinity, femininity, red pill, feminism, black pill, white pill, all the skittles. I'm not interested in this, honestly. I've already done something like 200 videos for the Qawamun playlist, the Qawamun channel when we had it. I've more or less said everything that I have to say about that. But it is interesting to me for other reasons. like I say, for the politics of it all, and what it means in terms of options for the future for Westerners, and including Muslims in the West, because it indicates or it reveals, like I say, a lack of responsibility, a lack of maturity, and really a lack of thinking skills, planning, anticipating consequences, and so forth. This is a real condition in the West, and it's very serious. And to a great degree, I think that this condition has been engineered for the population, particularly in America, you know, because if you're able to foresee consequences, if you're able to predict realistic, probable outcomes, you're at an advantage. And if you can't do that, you're at a disadvantage. You're at an insurmountable disadvantage. You're in a state of loss, no matter what you're trying to do. And I think part of this comes from the entitlement and the coddling, that you've never had to consider the consequences of your actions. You've never had to consider what your actions might lead to, because you'll be protected from the consequences anyway. This again suggests either a lack of experience or else a complete failure to learn anything from your experiences. And it's
Now, welcome back again to the African Streamline. Now, in this video, I want to start by saying or apologizing for the inconvenience. I posted a video just a day ago. It was a speech from Shahid BOLSEN, and that video, I really didn't check out the video when I was posting the video, and the video really had some issues. You know, there was a lot of noise. The background was really having a lot of noise. I just didn't check it out because I wasn't even in the studio. I was just somewhere, and I felt like I must do a video because it is my, you know, like I'm used to be posting every other time, and I felt like I have to do that video. I wasn't really in the studio. I was somewhere, I was visiting a place somewhere, and I just decided to do that video, you know, and it had some noise, and people really didn't like the fact that there was too much noise in that video, you know, and I really feel sorry for everybody. I really feel sorry for those who watched the video, and please, I am so sorry. It's coming from the deepest part of my heart. Yeah, it wasn't planned, it wasn't intentional, it is just some inconvenience, yeah, just a mistake, but I promise it won't repeat itself again next time. You know, where you are the people that you're making me do what I'm doing, and therefore I must listen to whatever you're saying. So I've listened to that. I went through that video. I felt like I even saw the mistake. It was really making a lot of noise, but I had already posted it, and I promised I'm gonna post the same video that is quiet, so that I can be able to listen and to see and to get the whole speech clearly what Shahid BOLSEN was talking about. Now, in this video, Shahid BOLSEN was really talking about something very fundamental, yeah, and he was talking about something that the black people have, you know, and the white Americans don't really have. And the reason as to why the white Americans do not have this quality is because of the culture, maybe, let me say, or maybe how they bring up their children and the generations and all that. You realize that there's a very big difference between the African kid and or a black kid, a black American kid, and a white American kid. You know, there's a very big difference, and the difference has always been because of how they're raised up or how they are brought up. You see, there are things it is very difficult for you to find or to come across a black kid doing because of how they are nurtured, because of how they are brought up by their parents and all that. But it's you're going to find the same thing being done by a white kid, and you're looking at it, you're feeling like, no, this is insane. It shouldn't be happening like this, you know. So Shahid BOLSEN is trying to say that the American systems of governance, and maybe let me just say the systems put in place, are the ones that are really destroying generations after generations. And these generations, they've realized they've forgotten to realize that it is a tomorrow's community or a tomorrow's future where it's going to reflect the picture and the image of a country, you know. And I would want to tell you that the black people's, you know, the ability of them raising and bringing up a super and wonderful generations, it's because of the culture, you know, and let me say the DNA in them, because from the way back during the times when the African Americans were still in Africa before the transatlantic slave trade, you know, the cultures in Africa were very beautiful cultures. The cultures that used to raise people in a good way, to raise people in the right way, and all that. And generations used to come out a very super and wonderful generations, you know. And it was part of the work of every day, And so when transatlantic slave trade happened, that culture and that DNA still remained in the black people. And therefore, African Americans have always used to be raising kids and their generations well, But the white American systems, the white Americans' way of life is the ones that is destroying their generation. You're going to look at what is happening there. You're going to look at what is really happening to young children, young people, and all that, and you won't like it. And Shahid BOLSEN is breaking it down very clearly, So I want you to take a look at this video once again. Now, this one that is now quiet without any noise, and then you tell me what you think in the comment section. I will come back and say, I will really appreciate, I'll read all your comments and give a response where possible. As you're watching it, prepare your thoughts, have them shared me in the comment section, and I will really, really do appreciate so much. Once again, I say sorry for that mistake that happened. Now, let's take a look at the video.
Just a lack of comprehension of responsibility and authority, like I said. And this, I'm very sorry to tell you, this completely disqualifies you from having your opinion on almost anything taken seriously. And don't misunderstand me here. I'm not saying this to you to try to berate or to dismiss you. I am telling you that this is the situation you are in, and you might want to do something about it. Because at the end of the day, unserious people are going to be mistreated, they're going to be used, they're going to be abused, they're going to be exploited, they're going to be manipulated, and the only remedy to that is to become a serious person. Look, take for example, when you're a young man, okay, you have a temper. Generally speaking, we have a temper when we're young. You get heated up about something, you get into an argument with someone, doesn't matter what it is, but you're young, you have testosterone pumping through you, you feel that aggression building up inside you. Well, you might just start swinging when you're young. You might just start swinging, try to win the argument with your hands, right? Okay, you won't act like that if you're a father. You won't act like that if you're a husband, if you have responsibilities, or if you've been in this scenario before, if you have experience in this. Like, when you're young and dumb, you might even start swinging, start a fight when you're at the top of the stairs and the stairs are behind you. You understand? You might start trying to get aggressive with someone while you've got one foot in your car and one foot on the ground, and the guy that you're in the fight with is on the other side of your car door, because you don't understand what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. You haven't been in this situation before, and you don't think about the CCTV cameras. You don't care if you're right outside in front of your own house. You don't calculate any of the factors that are likely going to lead to you either losing that fight or else will lead to you getting yourself arrested. But not if you're a father, not if you're a husband, not if you've got bills to pay, not if you've got duties, not if you've got responsibilities, and not if you've got people who are depending upon you. Okay? You might still get mad, or you'll still get mad when you're a husband and a father. You'll still get mad, but you won't lose your temper, meaning your mind has learned to process the situation that you're in better. So you learn to control yourself, as hard as that may be. You realize that the layout of your circumstances, okay, does not allow you to just start swinging without considering serious repercussions. So you make better decisions when you have responsibilities. And once you have that understanding, you can take it a step further. And you're actually able to understand or apply that understanding with regards to other people. In other words, you would understand why someone didn't decide to start fighting against someone that they had a right to fight when they had their back to a flight of stairs. And you wouldn't judge them a coward for that decision that they made and for just walking away. See, this is when your own experience gives you insights into understanding the circumstances that other people are in, and not judging them, not criticizing them, and not giving them foolish advice. Taking it a step further is when you don't even know what their circumstances are, but you know enough to realize that they do have circumstances, and that those circumstances probably factored into their decisions. You understand? See, when you're immature, when you're unexperienced, or else you have failed to benefit from whatever experiences you have had, well, you do foolish things, you say foolish things, you give foolish advice, and your criticisms are foolish. And no one who isn't immature, who isn't unexperienced, and who isn't foolish is ever going to listen to you. And in fact, being ignored is the best case scenario. Because the truth is that foolishness is a vulnerability. And there are plenty of people who are not unexperienced, but who are unprincipled predators and manipulators. And while you're standing up there spouting off all your nonsense and thinking that you're really saying something, all you're really doing is advertising to these types of people that you're a mark, you're a target, and you can be had. And they will definitely play you like a violin. And even if they don't play you, even if they don't take advantage of you, they will absolutely be more productive than you. They'll be more successful than you. They'll be more accomplished than you. They'll be more effective than you. They will reach their objectives better than you. And you will find yourself beneath them. You'll find yourself beneath them or behind them or under them. Okay, so what happens when your circumstances do not allow you to act in a certain kind of way, to get your rights? Okay, I'm talking about acting in a justified way. But your circumstances don't allow you to do what you have every right to do. Because if you were to do it right then and there, you're either going to lose or you're going to cause some sort of other harm to yourself or to your family, right? The conditions are not conducive. Well, that's when you start to grow other muscles. You start to grow other strengths. The muscles of cunning, the muscles of patience, the strength of planning and strategy and so forth. To where you can actually try to start now engineering the circumstances and engineering the conditions that will allow you to take your rights. You understand me? Because if you know that certain conditions are required in order for you to do this or that, or in order for you to get your rights, or what have you, then a mature person, a responsible person, immediately sets about trying to create those conditions. It's like I've talked about before. If you want to make a certain dish where you need certain ingredients, sometimes the first step in cooking a meal is planting a seed. You understand me? You tell someone that you're hungry and they grab their car keys and drive away. Okay, if you're a fool, you might think that they've just abandoned you in your hunger because you don't even understand that they're just going to the grocery store. I'm talking about maturity of thought, the maturity of your thinking, the maturity of your ability to process information, your understanding, and so on. And I'm talking about realism and the fact that those with responsibility and those with authority have a duty to be realists. But of course, being an unrealist is much easier. It's much easier. Reacting without thought is much easier. Being impatient is much easier. Throwing tantrums is much easier. But only in the short term. Only in the short term. Okay? For example, okay, the Muslim Brotherhood was banned and designated as a terrorist organization in Texas. Now, all Muslim organizations that are associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, in terms of funding and staffing and so forth, they're going to be under pressure now. If not completely eliminated, completely shut down. They're going to be shut down, most likely. And now Trump is saying that the federal government, at the federal level, they're also going to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. They're starting with certain chapters, I think. And they're going to ban them. I think that like I say, I think they're beginning with regional affiliates or chapters of the Ikhwan first. But this is moving towards complete delegitimization. Now, you should recognize that this is coming, in my opinion, this is coming as a result of demands being made by the UAE and by Saudi Arabia. Okay? Saudi Arabia owns the biggest oil refinery in Texas. They've now pledged to pump in $1 trillion of investment into the United States of America, into the American economy. And they hate the Muslim Brotherhood. Yes, they do. And the UAE hates the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay? Now, the U.S. has talked many times before. They've talked about banning the Ikhwan. But you see, the Ikhwan have always been a useful tool for Qatar, for Iran, and for Turkey. They've been a useful tool for the neocons and for the camouflage neocons and for the colonizer activists and so forth. So it never materialized. It never happened. The banning of the Ikhwan never happened. But as I keep telling you, things have changed. The era of the Muslim Brotherhood's Islamism of destabilization is coming to an end, which means that the neocon approach to the Muslim world is coming to an end. The colonizer approach to the Muslim world is coming to an end. The GCC has won the management contract for the Middle East, and they have mended all of the antagonisms between them. Turkey, Qatar, Iran, everyone has come together to build collective sovereignty in the region. And that means that the Muslim Brotherhood has now become a tool without any useful function for anyone who used to use it. Which means that it's now possible. Now it has become possible The conditions have become conducive for the UAE and Saudi Arabia to pursue their elimination, because the Muslim Brotherhood has always been exactly what I'm talking about. They've always been simplistic, reactive, unserious, emotional, unrealistic, and juvenile in their approach and in their rhetoric. The truth is that the Muslim Brotherhood has always been completely incompetent in terms of politics. Politically, they are breathtakingly naive, I'm telling you. As an organization, they are already almost entirely irrelevant, okay? They've historically been very good at creating foundations, creating institutes, creating organizations, and so forth. They've been very successful in that, and they've been successful in media and narrative engineering to one degree or another, and part of that has been because they have been useful to the neocons. And they've been good at hijacking popular opposition movements in the Arab world, as they did during the Arab Spring. And all of these skills, like I say, have historically been very useful to the neocons and to the colonizers. Because again, their approach, this reactive, this simplistic, emotional, irresponsible approach, has sort of lowest common denominator appeal. This is very good for narrative. This is very good for narrative spin in the Muslim world, and especially in the Muslim diaspora, because their target audience reflects these same qualities, these same simplistic, idealistic, utopian qualities. So at this point, the Muslim Brotherhood is actually more a mentality than it is an organization. It is an anti-regime, destabilization, quasi-utopian sort of a mindset. That's why you see Egypt and the UAE and Saudi Arabia calling almost any critic Muslim Brotherhood, even if they actually have no connection whatsoever to that group at all. Muslim Brotherhood has just sort of become shorthand for the Islamism of anti-government, neocon, destabilization, and delusion. Basically Muslim Twitter. I don't think the Muslim Brotherhood was necessarily always this way, but at some point, they just became obsessed with their own power ambitions. And this made them, this obsession for power, this ambition for power, made them slaves to whoever they thought could grant them power, meaning whoever would support them against the Muslim governments. And that, of course, was Washington. That was the neocons. So this now supposedly anti-imperialist movement, the Muslim Brotherhood, transformed into a straight-up collaborator movement. And that's been the case for many, many years. So with the Ikhwan, you have like two layers of what I've been talking about. You have the Muslim Brotherhood themselves, the group, the organization, who are naive, who are unqualified, who are self-important, simplistic, with no concept of how the world really works, just like teenagers, just like adolescents. And then you have all the people who have been led astray, who have been indoctrinated, and who have been manipulated by the Muslim Brotherhood. Because they all have the same qualities. They have these same qualities that the Brotherhood has, and that the Brotherhood expresses. And because of those qualities, both the Ikhwan themselves and everyone who has adopted their mentality, they became really enemies to their own people. They became enemies to the progress and the prosperity and the independence of their own nations. And ultimately, they even became enemies of true Islamic understanding and knowledge. They became enemies of what they were themselves advocating, in fact. They should have just stuck with building welfare, social welfare institutions and organizations and so forth. They were good at developing those types of things. But you see, the problem is, they only started those sorts of activities in the first place as a tactic for eventually leveraging that to gain political power. You see, there was no ikhlas. That was always their intention. Power was always their intention. So, okay, this is an example of what happens when you are fundamentally unserious. Okay, in the short term, you can be at best disruptive, but in the long term, you mostly only have influence in terms of degrading the thought processes and maturity of your followers, of your audience, of your supporters and your sympathizers. You're detrimental to your people. And ultimately, you will get eliminated. Either you will be actively eliminated or you will just be dismissed and you'll be consigned to irrelevance, as has happened to the Muslim Brotherhood. First they were irrelevant and now they're going to be eliminated. And anyone who is guiding you towards that sort of a mentality is doing you a severe disservice. The most insidious thing about it is that the whole time that they're doing this and that you're following along with this, you'll feel like they're hearing you. You'll feel like they're representing you. You'll feel like they're empowering you and so on. When in reality, whether they even understand it or not, they are actually ushering you into the captivity of irrelevance. They're neutralizing you while you think that they're empowering you, and they might even think that they're empowering you. See, the Muslim Brotherhood, just that organization, sort of encapsulates this whole phenomenon in terms of the Muslim world, what you see in the Muslim world. But the totality of Western society does this to you. And in fact, the Muslim Brotherhood, it could be argued, or I would argue, they either became this way, or anyway, they never developed beyond being this way because they completely embraced westernization. Yes, they did. The Muslim Brotherhood, the Ikhwan, is a thoroughly westernized organization at this point. It's a colonizer, collaborator organization, and has been for many, many years. And they use Western tactics. They use Western thinking. They use Western paradigms and so on. And as things stand now, the Ikhwan have the most influence in the Western diaspora, much more than they have within the Muslim world. They're kind of a joke, actually, in the Muslim world, to be honest. But Western and westernized Muslims, in my opinion, what I can see, are still mentally influenced by their approach, which is not surprising because, like I said, the West relentlessly corrals their people, corrals their populations towards unseriousness. So see, I'm talking about this like, for us, okay, for the Muslims, the Muslim Brotherhood is a cautionary tale. It's a cautionary tale. You know, on the one hand, it's a cautionary tale in terms of how not to do a Muslim organization, because the Ikhwan basically is a sect. It's basically a cult, honestly. Most people who sympathize with the Ikhwan don't really understand this. They don't really realize this, precisely because of their rhetoric, the Ikhwani rhetoric, and because the lowest common denominator whom that rhetoric appeals to are not capable of scrutinizing that rhetoric because of all of the emotions that get activated. They're passed off as legitimate political, intellectual discourse and commentary and critique, while it's actually all just demagoguery and manipulation. The Muslim Brotherhood has not produced a single competent political leader in the entire almost 100 years of their existence. And that's despite their continuous assertions about how pragmatic they are, how strategic they are, and how brilliant they are. But okay, like I say, this is just one group in the Muslim world. This is a group in the Muslim world that has tried to dupe us. To varying degrees, they've been able to do that to many people. But your entire society in the West is dedicated to duping you. And the extent to which they have succeeded is truly breathtaking. The success of the Muslim Brotherhood has been very limited compared to what your society has done to you. I mean, literally, things can be happening right in front of your eyes and you don't see it for what it is. You always recede into narratives and debates about narratives, debates between narratives. And no one wants to, or no one is even capable of, actually looking at reality. And see, this is what I mean about you have to have the ingredients in order to make a meal. If you want to make a meal, you have to have the ingredients for that meal. So in your society, they don't even need to keep you out of the kitchen, you understand? They can give you the pots and pans. They can let you in the kitchen. They can give you access to the oven. It doesn't matter. They can even give you the recipe, because you're not going to make anything at the end of the day, because they have made sure that you don't have the ingredients to make anything. Look at your society right now. The most enlightened people in your society, okay? The most enlightened people in your society are railing against the elites, right? The elites control everything. But you haven't even clocked the reality. You haven't even clocked the fact that the elites are literally dismantling your whole society. They're done with America. Your problem isn't that they own and control everything. Your problem is that they are discarding it. They're discarding all of it. They treated your whole society as disposable, and now they're throwing it out. They're disposing of it now. But see, you can't imagine a world in which America is not the center of gravity. You can't imagine a world in which the United States of America is actually marginalized and unimportant. You can't imagine a world in which America is de-developed, is de-industrialized, is impoverished and conflict-ridden, and is just nothing more than a wasteland. You can't imagine a world where everyone in the world outside the United States looks at America and says, thank God I'm not in that miserable police state, tyrannical, backwards, low IQ country. You can't imagine that, but that's where you're heading. It's already moving in that direction. You're still telling yourselves that everyone wants to come to America. Talking about America, immigrants are taking over the United States. Meanwhile, global immigration to America, or even interest in going to America, has been declining for years. While American immigration and interest, Americans moving, I'm saying, Americans' interest in moving out of America has been increasing for years. Everyone wants to come to America. Meanwhile, for Muslim countries, less than 1% of their populations ever apply for visas to America. And no Muslim country is even in the top 10 of the countries in the world that are sending their people to America, not for visits and not to immigrate. The percentage of your population that is foreign-born isn't so high because everyone is trying to get there, everyone is trying to come over there. It's because the people who are from there are not reproducing themselves. You understand? And as I said in the beginning, that's no big surprise. You have had your personality so warped that no one can even stand each other over there. So yes, obviously reproduction is undermined, relationships, marriage, and so forth, not to mention the cost of having children over there. Do you see? You are being engineered out of existence. You're being engineered out of existence. You're being ushered into the captivity of irrelevance. And you can't even understand what's happening. Did you see that story about the two white kids from Texas who were planning to take over a Haitian island? This psychotically racist, moronic fantasy that they were living out? No, look, there is no way in the world that that was not one of those FBI sting entrapment type operations. Just like they did against us for the last 20 years with the Patriot Act and Homeland Security and so forth. You know how they would do. They would take some dumb Muslim kid and they would guide him and steer him and enable him and urge him to follow some violent, crazy terrorist plan that they themselves cooked up. Just wait, I'm telling you. This Texas lunacy sounds exactly like one of those things. And that means that they are now manufacturing crazy, violent white people the same way that they used to manufacture crazy, violent Muslim people. And obviously, that's going to be a lot easier to do in America. That's going to be much easier to do in America because you've already got a surplus of crazy, violent white people over there. And you have a whole culture, a crazy, violent culture to egg them on. I'm telling you, the whole white nationalist movement is actually being pushed precisely because the national owners and controllers of global financialized capital, they recognize that the future of the global economy is black and brown. It's not white. That's a fact. So we need these white people to start acting a fool, to start becoming extremists, to start becoming instigators, to become tools for their own destruction, because that's all white nationalism really is. That's all it is. If you think long term, look, if they got what they say they want, is nothing but global isolation and irrelevance for the West, for white people, for the West. Yes, even the dynamics of American racism are going to invert because of the transition, the global transition, because there is no economic future in white supremacy. Okay, this should be very clear. In terms of racial conflict, so-called white people are going to lose. And I'm saying that this is actually precisely why racial conflict is being stoked. Because everything that's going on points to the fact that the national OCGFC are in acceleration mode right now. You understand me? Accelerating the dismantling of American power, American centrality, American influence, and American importance. And the most privileged people in America are the so-called white people. Okay? So they need to be readjusted. They need to be re-educated to accept the new reality of no longer being a priority for the power structure anymore. The best way to take away someone's privileges is to make them act in a way that ruins it for themselves. Make them act in a way that appalls other members of that same group. You understand me? This is what they did to us. That's what they did to us for at least 2 decades. More than, but at least 2 decades. Always spotlighting Muslim violent, terrorist, hateful behavior that was more often than not actually engineered by U.S. intelligence in the first place. So then we would come out endlessly to condemn it. The rest of the Muslims would come out endlessly to condemn it. It would make us lower our heads in shame, make us apologize, and bend over backwards to try to show everyone that we would be good, that we would be peaceful, that we would be servile, that you didn't have to be afraid of us. Now, in my opinion, this same approach is underway with the so-called white nationalists and so on. You know, people like Nick Fuentes and others. All of these people, just like the Muslim Brotherhood in a way, it's like the Muslim Brotherhood. They're the leaders. You know, on the one hand, they're trying to rile up white people, make them act stupid, make them say stupid, hateful things, make them act violently and so on. And on the other hand, they're getting other white people to distance themselves from them. Because everyone's privileges are being revoked in America. You understand me? And the most privileged have to be dealt with very strategically. And like I say, there is the pre-existing deep and pervasive racism that already defines that society, and that makes it even easier to do. to rile up white people and make them act stupid. Understand, I'm not talking about whatever these white nationalists say. I'm not taking their position about the so-called great replacement and what have you. You know, that so-called whiteness is under attack. Their so-called culture is under attack because of wokeness and anti-racism and so forth. No, what I'm saying is the reality is that so-called white people have been the beneficiaries of a system that no longer works in the world. And see, you have believed that your so-called whiteness was supposed to exempt you from the necessity of actually mattering to the global economy, and it doesn't. It doesn't protect you. It doesn't exempt you. You understand? The world is decentering from America and the West. And that makes white supremacy a liability. So they're going to bait white people into so-called standing up for whiteness so that they can cull you. You understand? Because thinking like that, with this white nationalism, thinking like that only shows that you have no place in the future. See? Again, this is very much like the so-called Islamists, like the Muslim Brotherhood. Getting people to come out for marches, getting people to join online forums and so on, getting people to spout their rhetoric, their vitriol, just so that you can be identified by the authorities as someone who's problematic, someone who needs to be watched, someone who needs to be isolated or eliminated, because the truth of the matter is you are not someone who is going to contribute to anything useful or productive in the world or in society, just like these white nationalist types. They have nothing to offer. They have nothing to contribute. And of course, the reality is that their actions will cause exactly what their actions are supposed to cause. Violence, division, polarization. I mean, can you not see that you as a population are being provoked at every turn? You understand? They sent ICE, right? Which is nothing but the American version of the black and tans auxiliaries that the British deployed to terrorize the Irish. Look it up if you don't know what the black and tans were. They sent ICE to every place that they thought would generate a violent backlash. Believe me, New York, Chicago, LA, and so on, until they finally sent them to the South, hoping that some shotguns would get brought out, you know? All the places that are known for guns and violence, Miami, Newark, etc., and having these ICE agents terrorize people. I'm telling you, they're trying to get a response. They're trying to get a response, deploying the army in this and that city and so forth. They're provoking. And I think it's deliberate. And it's a win-win for them. It's a win-win for them, however that provocation goes. The ICE agents are cannon fodder. I'm telling you. That's why you haven't seen a single one of those people, a single one of those ICE agents who has any idea whatsoever how to behave in anything like a professional manner, in anything like professional law enforcement. They hired goons and thugs. Their job is to provoke a backlash. And it's win-win for them, because if you don't react, if you don't retaliate, okay, so now you have become habituated. You have normalized this new approach to policing. That's a win for them. And if you do retaliate, which is what they really want, in my opinion, well, then they get to launch a scorched earth campaign across your cities, which is also a win for them. So it's a win-win. This is what's happening. They're telling you that AI is the reason that jobs are being cut in America, even though most of the jobs that are being cut are actually just moving overseas. Because the truth is that AI is actually incredibly bad at doing any real work. Your farms are going under. Your economy is spiraling down the drain. You're being openly terrorized and abused and kidnapped and assaulted by masked men in your streets. You're being surveilled. You know, whenever you drive anywhere, they're watching you. They're monitoring your driving patterns. And they'll detain you for no reason whatsoever. I mean, on and on and on. And yes, of course, you have the constant provocation of all of these different types of culture war groups. Hateful protests, violent protests, assassinations, and so on. Your country is falling apart and you know it. But you're not going to do anything about it. Because they've already made sure that you are incurably unserious people. They've made sure that you don't have the ingredients necessary to actually make anything. You understand me? And that's what I'm saying. This is the grave danger of immaturity, the grave danger of unseriousness. And this is what I mean by the captivity of irrelevance. You're just scrolling. You understand? You're just scrolling. On average, the average American spends between 5 to 7 or even 8 hours a day either scrolling or browsing the internet or watching movies and TV, streaming services. I mean, the rest of the time, I assume that you're at work or asleep. You drink, you smoke, you do drugs, you watch pornography, you make frivolous content. Like you have time for that. You understand? Like you have time for that. You do not have time for frivolity right now. You honestly don't. But you can't actually wrap your head around the ramifications of what's happening, of what's truly happening. You think it's all just drama. You think nothing's ever really going to change. You think that America is always going to be on top. You think that the West will always be on top. You know, you think that maybe you're just going through a difficult moment as a country. No, it is over. I'm telling you. If you don't start getting serious now, then there's no future for you individually. You don't have time to be worried about celebrity, I don't know, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds or Ariana Grande or what have you. You don't have time for this. You don't have time to be ranting about women or ranting about patriarchy, ranting about feminism. You know, these are my top 10 movies released in 2025. You don't have time for this nonsense. See, you're used to the privilege of being able to waste time. Like you think that you can just hide your head in the sand of some streaming service and wait for all this to blow over. But it's not going to blow over. You didn't hit a pothole, you drove off a cliff. And it's not just because of Trump. Don't tell yourself that. Don't think that all I have to do is try to hold on until this administration is over and everything will go back to normal. No, you're on a trajectory. You're not on a treadmill. You understand? You're going to a certain destination. You know, and I see people online who are telling themselves and telling each other, something's got to happen. Something's got to change. Something's got to give and what have you. Talking about ICE, talking about Trump or what have you. Saying FAFO, right? Pretending to yourselves that people are going to rise up. Pretending that, I don't know, Candace Owens or Tucker Carlson or whoever else, anyone on either side of the machine, left or right side of the machine, you're pretending that they're going to lead some sort of a mass movement that's going to fix everything. Yes, just like the Muslim Brotherhood. Just like the Muslim Brotherhood people believe. Which is exactly why the Egyptians, who know the Ikhwan better than anyone else, why the Egyptians call the Muslim Brotherhood drug dealers. And anyone who's like them, they call them drug dealers. Selling the utopian opioid. No, that's not going to happen. And I've told you before, all you can do is brace for impact. There's no turning around. So you need to be serious now. You need to be serious. Not for social change, not for your society, not for America, not for the West or what have you. America doesn't care about you. The West doesn't care about you. America and the West has put you in the situation that you're in. So you need to be serious for yourselves. You need to be serious for your families. You need to be serious for your children, if you have any. And you need to be serious for your community, if that's possible. You don't have time to waste, I'm telling you. You don't have time to waste. Even these Epstein files, right? The emails and so on. Even the earlier case with Diddy. Wallahi, this is all part of the dismantling of the domestic power hierarchy. It's part of the subordination of America. Discrediting everyone in your society. But somehow you act like you think that American empire can end, but life in America will go on as if the empire didn't end. Or you act like some ex machina is going to come along to save you in the nick of time. I'm telling you again, and I've said it repeatedly, this is not going to happen. And yes, the truth of the matter is it shouldn't happen. Because the downfall of America is perhaps the most deserved downfall in history. And I'm saying that most of you don't even have the ingredients to save yourselves. Because the most important ingredient in all of this is seriousness. And the truth of the matter is that the hypermarket of America never did stock that item. So I would suggest that you start looking for it somewhere else.